Now we're going to look at handwriting and why handwriting is very important. We need to make our handwriting different from the fonts. This is a traditional basic handwriting practice guideline, and this is what I call a print handwriting where the letters stand up straight. When you write your letters, you want to make them look like they were written with a hand. And the important thing in writing letters is to make sure that you write them in a certain order, in a certain way, so that they all look different, and that when you write them fast and you make natural small mistakes, it's still easy for people to know what you were trying to write. That's why the Q has a tail, so it doesn't look like it's an accidental 9. That's why the I and the J face different directions. And this is also why the D has a tail, but the B does not. We want all of our letters to look very different even when we write them fast and make mistakes. It's best to learn the letters this way with a slight slant so you can get really good control. Now, this is an example of a double story A and a double story G if that's what you want to do. And the reason I wrote this double story G is because I went back and did my homework and I found some of the handwriting examples from the Italian Renaissance scholars. And they just like to put big, beautiful tails on their Gs. And the upper counter, as we call it, just got really small, and that's how we got the double story G in the Roman fonts. And this A technically starts kind of like an S, comes around, but I don't like to write them that way. I like to write my A's this way. So here's an example of a good way to start practicing handwriting. But this third handwriting style here, I call geometric, because around the middle of the 1900s, teachers started to have the idea that it's better if we do everything like a machine. So a font like this was used to teach children handwriting. It was thought that if people could learn to write more like machines, that would be better. Well, many people disagreed, and I disagree. But when I made these, and I made all of these handwriting styles, I also made this one to give you an example of what that looked like. This is a geometric handwriting style, if you want one. I don't recommend it. I think that you should learn to write this way first, and then if you want to do printing, just stand them up. This second print handwriting style is exactly the same as the basic. It's just standing up straight. If you learn to write slanted, it's easier to move into cursive. If you're not going to write cursive, writing straight up and down is easy for people to read. After you can do these, then if you really want to, you can learn a geometric handwriting style, but that's more artistic, and you still need to write it in a certain way so that if you write your B really, really fast, people don't think that you tried to write an L and an O. Or if you write your D very fast, but you make a mistake, people won't think you tried to write a C and an L. You still need to organize your letters so that when you make mistakes, people still know what you were trying to write. This last handwriting style on the bottom is how I write my letters. And here at the end are some examples of how things could be a little bit different if you want. I write my letters this way because I don't like writing slowly. I don't like picking up my pen, and I can talk more about that later. Up here at the top, I have the ascenders and the descenders in this magenta color so that it's easy to see where the parts of the letters are that go up and go down. Down here, we have this cyan guideline area, and the solid and the dotted lines are how most Westerners learn to print their letters. But I think when we are first learning the letters, the parts of the letters that go up and down are separate. Now, this S here at the end is what I call a Helvetican S. It's my own S. All these letters are my own design. This capital S is a traditional textbook S. The small part is on the top, and the bottom is larger, and the lowercase s is the same. Now, how I write, I had this Helvetican S, and I call it Helvetican because it's very similar to the Helvetica font S style. It's not perfect circle, but it has beautiful curves. And this is kind of a geometric S here. But I put this S at the end of the capital letters to give an example of how you might write your S. Now, some people might disagree with this Y, but I don't think that a Y should be 3 strokes. I think that a capital Y should be 2 strokes. So this would be my capital Y, and this would be a lowercase y. So I'm not going to talk too much about the differences here, but I will say that the first basic letter to learn is an A. The shape of the lowercase a appears in the B and the D, the G, the P, the Q, and it's the most difficult to draw. Also, we have the E and the S. These letters are very difficult. A D is very similar to an A. So in my curriculum, I suggest that the first word to write should be pages. I also suggest that when writing capital letters, start with H, because the idea of the different lines and the letters going down and then across and then with the I makes the most sense to learn to write letters that way, so we know the basic stroke order. Again, in English, stroke order is not very important. In Asian languages, it's much more important. But the reason you want to use the correct stroke order with the letters is so that when you write the letters fast and you make mistakes, people will see where your pen was moving, making its mistakes, and they'll be able to recognize what letters you were trying to write. I've made this chart with 2 of the main writing styles, the slanted basic and then the upright print. And I've added colored dots to make it easier for beginners to write the letters. Start with green, and then go straight to yellow, and then finish writing in the proper order, and stop at the red dot. Now, if you look closely, the green is a circle, the yellow is a square, and the red is an octagon shaped like a stop sign. This is intended to be printed off, and there are practice sheets with what I call guide dots. Now my A here starts with the green dot on the bottom. That's because I think it's easier to draw an upside down V. I don't think there's any reason at all to draw 2 lines. I think the reason why teachers drew this capital printed A starting from the top both lines is because teachers believed that students weren't able to write it as easily starting at the bottom. I disagree, especially if we learn to write H first and then move to I and then the other letters, as is part of my curriculum that you'll see. But if you want, I wrote an example over here, the man-nam difference. I like to write capital letters man style. Start with the green dot, yellow, end on red. M is 1 solid stroke. You never lift your pencil. So is it with A until you cross. N is also the same. The way many schools teach is what I have here as the nam style, backwards. And that's where you start at the green dot and go down, pick up your pencil, move all the way up to the top, try to get it back onto the same spot, hope there isn't a space, and then go down and up. Now, I don't know why we shouldn't pick up our pencil again and always go down since we're doing that, but that doesn't make sense to me anyway. There's the A. Start with the green dot at the top and then pick up your pencil and do it again. That's how many in school are taught. I don't agree, but this is it if you want it for reference. And again, the M is the same. Green dot, go down to the yellow, pick up your pencil, go back up again, and then the rest is a continuous stroke, which again doesn't make sense to me. But this is here for reference. I do it man style as opposed to nam style. So here I have the slanted printed letters. Here I have the upright printed letters. And here are some guidelines. And this is a reference sheet. Here on the website, you'll see several other places you can look at. And here we have the capital letters. I suggest this is the best order to start writing. First teach H, then I, F, E, then do all the capital letters, and then start with just the words pages and send. And if you want to just practice the P and then just practice the A, print off several copies. All of these are intended to be printed. Teach the letters in this order, and only at the end you get to the full basic alphabet. Each of these clicks on a Google document, and then later on, after you get the dots with the stroke order, these all have guide dots. Then, here are some practice sheets, and some of these have the letters, others are just blank. and they're different sizes, but for each version with the letters that you can practice writing on top of, there's a blank version. The number tells how many lines there are, so more lines mean smaller lines. And you can click around and get everything you need. If you want to have my guide dots for all of the 5 handwriting styles I made, here it is right here. I'll leave that up to you, and you can explore this as you like.